If you could just give me a few minutes,
Okay.
we're just going to show this room and advertise this room a
Okay.
little bit more, right?
Just give me about 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm out of here.
Okay.
He wanted to show roller coaster. I have motion sickness. I think he was trying to set me up with that. I'm actually suffering right now. Motion sickness. So I figured we do something common like yoga, like nice common thing, so they can see it. I'm trying to sell the university. I think he's thinking about Montclair State. Right? But I think Kane got the coolest principal president. How you guys doing otherwise? Everything's good? So what is it I can do to support your club?
No class during Ramadan.
Huh? Well, that's good. That might be a little more challenging. Ramadan is not like a 1 or 2 day thing. Because breaking them up, that's what I was here when we broke them up. Yes. So, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you say anything. So, I'm going to put it back on you. Who registered to speak today at the town hall meeting?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
That thing's been advertised for about a month now. You see, so a lot of student concerns have been brought up at my town hall meetings, and a lot of results have happened as well. So yes, great question, but that's the question that should be asked at the town hall meeting, because you may not be the only person that feel that way, right? So you're telling me this, so I'm going to challenge you, because sometimes students want things, but when you put it on them, right? So my town hall meetings is a perfect place for you to talk about some of your concerns, and I like that, right? That could be something. So in my town hall, you know what I do? I challenge all my leaders and say, let's look at the options. Because last year somebody talked about vegan options, and guess what? The next semester we're going to vegan options. See, so that's a good platform for you to bring up some of your concerns. And it's not just bringing concerns, you're also bringing some solutions. Yes, you got a hand, sir?
Right. Yeah, I think I can ask one. Yeah, wait, do we have to go to town hall like, for that to ask for a law, or is that?
No, you could, but that's a platform meeting for you to actually stand up there, sit a question and say.
So you guys need to get a rep to send over there. That's basically what he's telling you.
No. You can send If you're the rep information, you can send you can actually register to sign up and send your question. We got people who are not even going to attend but send their question. So it's actually in person. It's 5:30. I'm not going to tell you. It's really up. So if I tell you everything, it means I've done everything to get there.
But if you don't want to speak on your own, you can still submit a request, and then somebody else will be able to read it on your behalf.
You have to do your homework. I told you what it is. I'm not going to give you everything, because that means that they spent, how long now we spent on about a month. See, so they do all the work to promote it, and the students don't show up. But the ones who show up, things actually happen. So that's a hint.
So you said it's today?
Yes.
Where is it?
Don't ask me what time, and don't ask me where it is.
5:30 at the
No.
I'm sorry.
No. They're supposed to do that.
They just needed to have the logistics right so that they don't spend the time
You
here.
go to the social media, you go to their Cougar link, you go to all the places that we have information. You go to. That's why we put it there, right? I have a daughter in 10 schools here, and guess what? She don't know what's going on campus because she does not read information that we put up there. And she'll ask me something, I'll say, I'm not telling you. So I'm not going to give you everything, right? I'm not going to give you the secret sauce. You ask me a question, and I'm not going to tell you when to show up, what time. But you guys are more than welcome to show up and ask the question. And even though you're supposed to submit your question in advance, because I'm here today, I'll let you come up and ask the question. All right, good luck, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So we're gonna start in a few minutes, inshallah. Wait, who's gonna go to that meeting?
I'm going.
Should ask for a chaplain.
For chaplain?
Muslim chaplain.
For an imam?
Yeah, and for funding for
I don't go
the
here, bro.
Funding.
how you find in a dedicated space.
But I'm assuming it's a girl from the MSA.
So why would I know?
Because you're also a girl in the
There's
MSA.
multiple girls.
Yeah, because basically we were advocating with basically the president's office. That's where they sent somebody
I don't
here
know everything they do.
to to speak to you guys. So if you guys don't show up, then I work on that end as well.
Yeah. I'm talking about I don't really have much to
Or in space, maybe. Like space.
Wait, we should put this in like a subway, huh?
It's 350. You can start from
We can put kava around you.
Yeah.
We can make you feel like you're sitting in her.
Let's try it. Let's try this.
Right, we'll make that happen.
Okay. Let's make it.
We can make it
So
seem
we'll broadcast your iPad for now while we work on the background.
Wait, so what do you want
But
me to write
the
down?
Kaaba can take precedence. It's okay. We don't need it.
You got it. So.
Thanks. What did you say?
What did you want me to?
Chapter C, and how to access funds and a dedicated space for the.
You just need to connect this right back. Clicking on yeah.
No.
What was the last one?
Dedicated space.
Oh. Yeah, you said funds, dedicated spaces,
And chapter C, how to access funds
Actually, maybe not.
and the dedicated space. Given the nature that the MSA changes frequently, in order to have a stable MSA or club, you need to have someone that's a representative and also someone to help integrate the Muslim students on campus. And also a liaison with the Muslim community.
I didn't even realize until you told me.
I was like, what? From all angles.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. We're taking up the topic of modeling, the prophetic modeling of emotional intelligence. And this is an area which we're beginning to see more and more literature come into it due to the popularity of the idea of emotional intelligence. Does anybody have any experience with the concept or have any ideas? From what the term, the words in the term convey, what meaning do you get? There's two words in that term, emotional intelligence. What's the first thing that comes to your mind in that regard?
I think maturity.
Huh?
Maturity. But
Maturity meaning what?
Maybe that's not the best word.
Have confidence.
No, I'm
build it up.
I'm confident that's not being the best word.
Okay.
I would say experience.
Okay.
And I say that because, as they say, experience is the best teacher. So, I feel like that kind of correlates with emotional intelligence to a degree.
I have a quick comment on the whole. Okay, so for instance, if experience is the best teacher and you need to make a decision about your life, and in order for you to be able to make that decision, you have to have the experience. Does that mean you have to go and play trial and error with everything you're like? Yeah, so experience is not the best teacher.
Okay.
Experience is not always the best teacher. Our lives are not science projects. You know what I'm saying? So we have to separate between the concept of experience that we gain kind of in the laboratory or in a scientific way, and then the whole issue of when we're making ethical decision making or moral decision making. If you're religious, ethical, you're not necessarily religious, but you need to balance out harm and benefit. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what were you going to say to compliment that?
Me? I was saying, like, with maturity, I guess it's like how you control or like how you act on your emotions, whether you tend to lash out or to restrain yourselves.
So it has to do with being able to translate experience and benefit from it, right? But you don't want to make all your life decisions based on you have to try it out first. But yes, it has to do with that understanding, of how to navigate your emotions. Anybody else want to tap into that?
Being aware of other people's emotions.
Exactly. That's probably the higher level of being aware of others and how you navigate with them, and that comes up in this issue, in this reflection that we have. why do you think that this topic, emotional intelligence, has become so popular? Or why do you think we even need a concept of emotional intelligence?
An increase in domestic violence.
That's a ground. You know what I'm saying? That's a ground level reality. Let me ask you something really briefly. Do we measure emotional intelligence in IQ tests?
No.
So that was the argument. See, like the person that became popular with this was Daniel Goleman. But Daniel Goleman was not the one who had come across the idea. But in Western society, and specific in American society, there's very limited understandings of what intelligence are, right? And so even in the past, and the whole idea of IQ was skewed, for racial reasons. You know what I'm saying? And it is the bell curve. We know that it was a skewed concept. So there was like some breakthrough ideas, even though there's debates, like there's always debates between the right and the left over these ideas, that intelligence is more than what IQ tests were measuring. Like, so for instance, you had a competing idea within the realm of educational psychology and so on and so on. So you have people like Dr. Howard Gardner, who was at Harvard, and he pushed the idea that intelligence and the idea of multiple intelligence, he pushed that intelligence is not just a limited understanding of how to get through certain subjects. He said that's good for academics, that's good for teaching in the classroom, but life, it shows us that people are intelligent on other levels, not just the issue of manipulating mathematics and language and so on and so forth. People have intelligence in other realms. So in the whole idea of multiple intelligence, he challenged many of the Eurocentric views, meaning that what European culture identifies as intelligence. He opened it up a little bit, not without challenges. Even the science crew comes in and says, well, how do you prove that with data and so on and so on. So he even started to say there's like artistic intelligence. You know what I'm saying? He started to say that there's people intelligence. He opened it up. And so part of the discussion of emotional intelligence became important because we were limiting the understanding of the human being. See what I'm saying? The human being to only being a rational being, and then only exercising certain levels of rationality became intelligence. See, is that clear what I'm saying, or is that?
Yeah.
So then so the idea of intelligence is there's a battle for expanding what it means. So emotional intelligence, in part, especially now, has become important because of things like you said, and like what you said, relationships, or what happens, when relationships go bad in that sense. But not only relationships, like our relationship to other people, what's high in this country now on the individual level, which has to do
Divorce rate.
at the individual level,
Mental health,
mental health. More specifically, what within mental health is high?
depression.
Aside from depression,
Suicide.
suicide. So when it gets to that point where people are at that level of suicidal ideation or actually attempting it, it's indicating something. If it's one or two people, is one thing. But when you have patterns across the society, it's indicating there's something social that's an issue. So, and then when you talk about something a little lighter like depression, which can lead to a suicide if it's not dealt with properly, if it's, like real depression, not what we say depression is just in the general culture, but if it can be diagnosed as being depression. When you talk about people dealing with those issues, a lot of times it's people having issues with their emotions or issues with their relationships, right? But it doesn't just stay at that level of just like people having personal problems. It's also how the society is structured. You see what I'm saying? I'm not one of those people that just says that there's people have psychological problems and you just fix yourself. People may have psychological problems, meaning individual problems with themselves. They may have, we say that person has problems. But it also may be what is happening in the lifestyle, right? They may not have fulfilling relationships, right? Or they may not have enough means economically to allow them to go above survival, right? You always have this whole concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you guys been studied that a little bit or been exposed? Well, in the hierarchy of needs, you have your concept of basic needs, which is what you need to survive at the basic level. And then you have other things like you need recognition. But then at the top of it, they say self-actualization. And the idea is that self-actualization is that you're able to grow yourself to higher levels. You can't do that if you're worrying about whether you have lights on. You see what I'm saying? Or you can't do that if you have a terminal illness and you don't have health insurance. Or you can't do that if you don't have job security. If you're living out of fear and instability, that means your brain is going to begin to shut down from the creative mode to self-actualize, and you're going to get creative about survival. So you're going to be living at high levels of stress. You're going to be managing stress. You're going to be living high levels of fear, and so on and so forth. So in any event, to bring it home, we, like the quote does here, if you take the power of emotions to disrupt thinking itself, like on what occasion will emotion disrupt thinking? You mentioned one.
When you're upset.
Yeah, when you're upset is another one. See them? Yeah, when you're angry, right? When you're angry, and I want to tie that back into the prophetic modeling. The Prophet ﷺ told us what about anger? Anybody? Who was telling me? You're the one that's telling me about the 40 hadith.
Yeah, I have it in my book bag.
Yeah, and the 40 hadith, we have one of the hadiths which the Prophet ﷺ gives that guidance, and he says it 3 times. La taghdab, la taghdab, la taghdab. 3 times, don't get angry. Don't get angry, don't get angry. When we look at it, it seems like basic advice. But then, when you really meditate on the prophetic teaching in this case, why would something be emphasized over and over again? If you emphasize anything, if you say something over and over again,
The intensity of it.
yeah, the intensity of it. And what else do you now take us, clarify more for us on the issue of the intensity of it.
So when the Prophet repeats something, it's known like in a hadith, if he repeats it more than once, then that means to be very mindful of that.
Yes, and by the way, there's a book that's like it's written by compiled by Shaikh Abu Ghudda, who is a hadith scholar, rahmatullahi alayhi. It's called The Prophet as Teacher or The Prophet as Educator, and the better print of that is from Awakening. A brother from the UK named Hassan al-Banna, he translated it. But that's an excellent book to have because it teaches you how to model the prophetic example. You know what I'm saying? When you want to communicate, when you want to educate. But the prophetic example in this case of anger, the repetition is there to also emphasize that this is a problem area. And it's an area when the repetition comes is because we're neglecting dealing with that situation. Now when you talk about domestic violence, you see what I'm saying? If you were to think about the absence of that prophetic teaching, then that's what you get. If you think of, like, for instance, the advice of not getting angry, right? When that advice is not implemented, it leads to violence. One of the first things the court system does to deal with domestic violence is anger, management training. But then in reality, that anger management training just stays at a kind of almost like a surface level. People are getting angry for reasons. You see what I'm saying? It could be past trauma that's not dealt with. It could be a person is addicted. It could be a person is having a certain type of thinking that's problematic and the decision making is off. It could be that the person looks at the spouse as being a thing. It could be 1,000 things that have to be addressed, right? So when we look at the reality of emotions, right? Emotions is not just on one side and reasoning on the other side. Reasoning and emotion, they feed each other. It's going back. That's why here, Dr. Gomez says the emotions that matter for rationality and the dance of feeling and thought. The emotional faculty guides our moment-to-moment decisions. See what I'm saying? So emotional intelligence is about helping us understand ourselves, what goes on, that we're not really talking about. Like, someone, sometimes if you get good at reading faces, you can tell, if you know the person well enough, or even if you're good with human behavior, you can sense something is wrong, even if the person has a smile. See what I'm saying? You can, because the human beings, we mirror each other. Right? That was called into doubt by modernity. That's why the whole issue of emotional intelligence is important. Because modernity and modern philosophy had the idea that I don't know the other person. I know myself. That's where egoism comes in. That even though this goes beyond this circle of reflection, but that was the problem of Cartesian thought. Right? When you study introduction of philosophy or whatever at the universities, the idea that I can't know you. You see what I'm saying? And when you take that to the extreme, what do people that become like suicidal or heavily depressed, what do they say? No one understands me. You see what I'm saying? You don't know what I feel. So if no one can know what you feel and you can't communicate with anybody, where does that put you emotionally? Isolated. And if you go deeper, what is the definition of insanity really in reality? The definition of insanity has a lot to do with you being locked in your world and you don't have any connection to outside of yourself. See what I'm saying? So Islam then, when we look at the reality, the prophetic model, when you look at a book like a simple book like the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi, which is a different way of doing biography, right? It is trying to capture the way the Prophet interacts. When the Prophet ﷺ interacted with people, they felt that they were the most important thing. Like he gave them full attention, right? He gave them full attention in the interaction. Now, let me ask you a question from your human experience. When people are lonely, what is one of the things that they lack? In this context that we're talking.
Communication.
Yeah, aside from communication, I kind of hinted to it. Huh? What did you say?
Communication.
No, aside from
I said that.
Support.
Emotional intelligence?
it does to deal with the emotional intelligence, but I referred to it indirectly.
Connections.
Connections, the attention from others. Children, when the parents are not giving them attention, what do? They become, why do the children start jumping on the sofa and throwing stuff? And why? Because their language is what?
It's physical touch.
It could be physical touch, but their language here is their behavior is expressing, you're not paying attention to me. I exist.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? When you have, you know what I'm saying, and you can quote me on this, but even though it's the responsibility factor in this regard, but when you go to, like, for instance, Philadelphia, and one group, maybe like YBC, they do a drill track. And after they do their drill track and they do their basic video with it, which they're mentioning how they went and they murdered their opposition. That's real in Philadelphia. You see what I'm saying? They're saying to society, I exist. You negate me. You know what I'm saying? You may negate me because of my poverty, or you may negate me because of my ethnicity, but I exist. And if I have to kill in order to prove to you that I exist, then that's what I'll do, good, because you as a society have negated me. That's why you have the whole concept that, basically the child that is devoid of love, the African proverb, will burn down the village to feel the warmth. See what I'm saying? Because that stuff is very real. In the individualistic society that we have now and materialistic, we reach the point that we don't know how to really manage our emotions. And in some cases, we're not going to be able to manage our emotions because our relationships are not nurturing relationships. There's a concept that I have down here, which is called the relationship matrix. And in the relationship matrix, play different roles. You're a friend, you're a daughter, you could be a mother, you could be a teacher, you could be an engineer. We play different roles. And we play different roles. We have different relationships. right? And in the relationship matrix, it's not just the roles that we play in that regard to people, but we have a relationship to the environment, we have a relationship to Allah, and we have a relationship to ourselves, like not just at the level of let me get my filter out to make my selfie, pop, so to speak, but what is my relationship to my own soul, right? Because we as Muslims, when we talk about the prophetic modeling of emotional intelligence, we believe that we have a soul. We believe that this life is not just the only life, that there's another life. Imam Haddad, he has a book called The Lives of Man. And here, man, don't take it offensive in the gender sense, but here, man means human in the classical sense. But there he talks about the human being as having multiple lives. Your life that you have in the womb, your life that you have, you see what I'm saying? That you have when you're maturing, when you become an adult, your life in this world, your life in the hereafter. You see, all of that comes into the relationship matrix, right? All of that has to come into your emotional life. Part of emotional intelligence for the believer is to understand that, okay, you may crap out in your relationship with your significant other. It may not be working. But that doesn't mean now that because that's not working, or my relationship at work is not working, that I get to project anger and violence in other realms, or I get to just collapse my life. You see what I'm saying? Because this part of my life is not working. You get what I'm saying? We want to have this idea that in the prophetic modeling of emotional intelligence, we have to be able to manage all realities of our life, this world and the hereafter, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with God, our relationship with, it's a lot to manage. And if we're not intelligent about how we take care of ourselves, our internal life is a lot to be frustrated over, is a lot to collapse you, is a lot to bring you to a point where life can be extremely difficult. So that's why, for instance, when we take the example of the hadith of anger, the Prophet ﷺ is modeling for us one aspect of emotional intelligence here. That this anger emotion can be extremely destructive, right? And we're taught to calm down. The same thing, for instance, why is it that intoxicants are forbidden in Islam?
Messes with your body.
Huh?
Messes with your body.
Yeah, it messes with your ability to think properly. And we know today, in today's time, we know that all weed is not natural. You know what I'm saying? And so we know that this has reached the level that, you know what I'm saying, you go to the dispensary and they have weed number 5, BA, and that makes you, just talk open, that makes you act sexual. You have weed, 153, and that makes you creative. And then you have weed number 24, and that makes you sleepy and down. It's chemically altered. And so not only is it chemically altered, it's showing us that it's at a level where it's playing with our emotions. See what I'm saying? And it's causing us to perceive certain things and experience certain things that we may not be ready for. Just like a child that's growing up in a traumatic, abusive household. Why is it that an innocent child, why do they have to experience heavy emotions like that while they're still developing? Or a young girl that's forced into a relationship and she's never been prepared for marriage, and then all of a sudden she has to deal with all those emotions that come from that, which she's not ready to deal with. That's why a part of emotional intelligence is to ensure that we protect each other from emotions that are problematic. And even when it comes to the idea of intoxicants, that extends to, for instance, protecting the mind. In other words, what we consume. We know that PTSD can come from overconsumption of films of violence and music, and that's violent. You know what I'm saying? So part of being emotionally intelligent is also being socially intelligent, spiritually intelligent. We have to be able to know that we need to feed ourselves. So that's why the hadith of brotherhood is another model. Like, none of you completely believes, which is the best translation, although literally says none of you believe, but the meaning is your iman is not complete until you love for your brother or your sister what you love for yourself. You can't love for your brother or your sister anything if you don't know how to love yourself. You see what I'm saying? If you don't know how to love, and part of loving yourself is being aware of what's in your best interest. Being aware of how to deal with yourself, how to take care of yourself. And that brings us to like another prophetic modeling of emotional intelligence that has to do with the center of intelligence, which in Islamic thought we believe is the heart, and rationality and everything goes to the heart. That's for another discussion. But an intention is important, because intention is where all that reflection is taking place. You know, should I do this? Why shouldn't I do that? You know, why am I with this person? Or why am I even doing this? Or, you know, you get what I'm saying? That's where all that is going in. That's the motivating factor. And intention becomes hard to manage if I'm just in a bad spot where I actually need help. Because part of intention, it's not just the issue of formulating a purpose, it's also being able to be motivated to achieve that. And if my motivation is out because I'm depressed, right? Because maybe there was some grief that I didn't manage well. Maybe my auntie passed away and everybody was just saying, you know, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, you know, it's with Allah, and that's it. And I didn't get to mourn properly. I didn't get to go through those emotions properly. You see what I'm saying? Or maybe I had a relationship breakup and everybody just like, the qadr of Allah, get over it. And I'm still not in that space. Or maybe, you know, I bombed out, failed out of multiple classes. And, you know, and I know that in my household, this means like, if I bombed out, you know, who am I? You know, my father may be like, have me at the level where if I don't accomplish this to become a doctor, then you're nothing. Your value is X'd out. You see what I'm saying? So maybe I'm going through those emotions. So yes, it's hard for me to pray. Yes, it's hard for me to even make dua. I'm overwhelmed. So that's why we can't get into any of it, but I'm trying to point you into that direction, that if we acquire at least some basics of what it means for emotional intelligence, we can see in the prophetic example, and we can see in the prophetic life, the prophetic's teachings, and we can even see in the Quran certain guidance that's being given. There was a time where the Prophet and his companions, they asked, you know, Meta Nasrullah, right? When is the help of Allah coming? So what kind of feeling do you think is there, which we like to deny it?
Fear.
Doubt.
What else?
Helplessness.
And what was the response of Allah, Shaykh? Yeah. With the definitive statement that the aid of Allah is near, which has everything to do with emotional intelligence, in the sense that in that moment of despair and sense of hopelessness, hope is the cure for that. See what I'm saying? Having hope so that you're not imprisoned. Because if you're imprisoned by the helplessness, your thought will be trumped by your emotions, and you won't be able to clearly think your way out of that situation. Whatever it may be. It could be your friend that messed up in life. It could be you that you don't see the opportunity coming. It could be a lot of different scenarios. So some of the 5 domains, you know, is knowing oneself. And again, we bring back the issue of intention. You know, the other issue is learning how to manage one's emotions. We don't want to say suppress, you know, because actually some say, and I think rightfully so, that depression is what? Depression is feeling what?
Down.
Is it feeling down?
No, down. Like sadness, like extreme
Some
sadness.
say depression is feeling numb, which we don't talk about. Having no feeling. If you're feeling down, your self is telling you there's something going on. But if you're feeling numb, you know, it's like, for instance, when you get sick, sometimes your tonsils. You know, I'm not negating your. It's common sense.
No.
But if you're sick, sometimes your tonsils will be the early warning system, and they hurt or whatever, you know, it may be. And it's the same thing with when you're feeling down. At least you're feeling something.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're feeling numb, that's a very, very dangerous state, because life doesn't matter. So it's also knowing how to manage emotions. And the issue of motivating oneself is knowing how not only to manage emotions, knowing how to transform those emotional states, right? And that requires some thought. How can I get myself to another position? That's why the idea of, in the early period of the Quran, the idea of doing good and believing in good and the reward for good is what's established. There's no salah for the most part. There's no obligations, no rules. Is this idea of believing in good, world is good, life is good, time has meaning. You see what I'm saying? So we can get to another point. The human being has value, human being has dignity, so that you can motivate yourself to get to another space. Because that definitely was a time period where it was a time period where there was hopelessness. Even when the Prophet ﷺ went to the cave of Hira, when he first got revelation, he went there looking for, how can I deal with where society is at? How can I deal with these conditions? And Allah sends down the Quran. And the first thing is awareness of the self. If we were to say that, is Surah Al-Alaq. Understanding that our lives are purposeful. And you know the interesting thing about science, we won't say that it proves it to be correct, the Quran to be correct, because that's not a valid approach. But science does give us some interesting insight in this point. Okay, if out of all the sperms that go to fertilize the egg, one goes through pretty much, right? Is that miraculous or not? If you were to look at the science behind it. You know, the probability of that not being the reality is high. The fact that you make it through, you know what I'm saying, that process and that first combination of life, those combinations that are necessary, those conditions for life, that stuff is like, that's why some people are like, this is by chance. No, it's not by chance. You being here is not by chance. It's impossible for that reality to be by chance. Your existence is dynamic, it's miraculous. Look at it, check it out. Check out some of the scientific analysis on that point. YouTube has some cool stuff in that point where it is knowledge based. And then think about your own self and the stages that you go through and your acquirement of language. You see what I'm saying? And for some of us, the fact that we have survived trauma and drama and we keep going and we keep finding meaning in life and we keep pushing. See what I'm saying? Some of our parents went through that. Some of our ancestors went through that. When you look at that reality of continuity of life and you reflect, it's amazing. You know what I'm saying? So having that sense of self to motivate, and then it's like what you were mentioning here and we were mentioning on this side as well in different ways, you know, recognizing, you know, others, emotion in others. We have something that's called the bystander principle. If you know, and that is that we shouldn't just sit on the sidelines when we deal with people, but we should be able to recognize, especially like in MSA, we should be able to recognize each other's needs. We have a principle in Islam. It's not only recognizing my brothers and sisters' needs, but anticipating their needs before they even vocalize it, right? That's a sense of community in which you feel belonging, you feel love. That's how, you know, emotional intelligence is developed through prophetic practice, right? Because then, you know how everybody wants a place to call home, so to speak. You know, in this time period in your lives, and I want to cut it after this, the university is one of the most dangerous places because there's 1,000 ideas and you're going through so much development. See what I'm saying? If you don't understand Islam in a healthy framework, it could destroy your life, you know, for the rest of your journey. If you understand that there's a contradiction between reason and revelation, that can mess you up when it comes to needing mental health, or it can mess you up when you need to deal with medicine, or it can mess you up in believing in superstition and not benefiting from knowledge. You see what I'm saying? It can even take you to an extreme in your practice of Islam. If you can't recognize other people as human beings and your religiosity closes you off from being it, you have to learn how to function on the campus. It just can't be us against them. See what I'm saying? You have to learn how to be integrated. It just can't be us, we hide in the corner. We have to learn how to be solid, how to grow, how to develop, how to flourish. See what I'm saying? That's not going to come without some sort of solid emotional grounding in our religion. right? And so then that comes back down to handling our relationships with Muslims and non-Muslims. That takes knowing how to feel, knowing how to think. Some of your sisters will end up converting a non-Muslim brother and get married because the Muslim brothers won't step up to be mature to get married. Some brothers will end up falling in love with a non-Muslim and try to figure out, well, what do I do? How do I tell my parents? Do I give her a shahada? Do we have two marriages? That's just reality, people. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But that's the circle that's there, right? That's the circle that's there. There's a lot to be said, but I want to close off on that point and also want to suggest the book Sustenance of the Soul by Shaikh Balkhi, Balkhi. There's a PDF online. You don't even have to buy it. It was translated by the late Dr. Malik Bedri, who's considered to be one of the contemporary pioneers of Islamic psychology. It's an ancient manuscript that was translated into English. It only has one part of it. The first part of it talks about people, the importance of physical health and taking care of your body for mental and spiritual health. You know, you have to look at the whole. So Imam al-Balkhi there was a pioneer in cognitive therapy. See what I'm saying? Where he talks about how we can have feelings of depression or anxiety. And sometimes that can come because we're thinking wrong about life. Right? So I advise you to look at that. And I advise you to you know what, I mean, all of the book is a little boring, the whole idea of the book of emotional intelligence. But there's a lot of case studies and so on and so forth. But the general idea is there. You know what I'm saying? This has become so popular that you can YouTube it and find some solid presentations. But we need to have that part and blend it with our understanding of the prophetic life. Why? Because many times as Muslims, we don't take care of emotions. When do we see it the most? When we lose our loved ones. You know what I'm saying? When do we see it the most? When people have divorce. When people are lonely. And so on and so forth. You see what I'm saying? So we have to be able to go to the next level. And I'm an advocate of this camp, that emotional intelligence, having the ability to navigate that, is very much a part of IQ. You can't be a good leader. You can't be a good friend. You can't be a good spouse. You can't be a good parent. You know what I'm saying? And I would even say, man, some people may argue me, you can't be a healthy Muslim, you know, without a good understanding of your emotions. Because that's where it gets hectic. I had a teacher who committed suicide. He was a Catholic priest when I was studying to be a priest. And he was a philosopher. The dude was a genius. And he said, you know, thought has it doesn't bother me at all. The complicated thing is emotions. Managing emotions. To the point that he was drinking and then they got out of hand. And then that's when Prozac was first out and it had all this, these dangerous side effects. And he was found in his sister's house dead. And so that, that's the reality, that emotions, when they get out of whack, it makes you do crazy things. There's enough studies to show when, for instance, bipolar disorder is not handled. Bipolar disorder makes people be very sexually activated. So that person can find themselves doing haram because they didn't what? Handle their emotional situation and take care of themselves. And then what do we do as a community? We shame them and judge them. And it's not only with that, people. I'll go even to the unpopular realm. We have certain conceptions of gender in Islam, but it's not in today's time as it was in the past. People have all kinds of ideas and feelings about sexuality. But if we don't have the right guide to that, us as Muslims, we won't develop the Muslim persona and personality in the right way. We don't have to disrespect people because we don't agree with the way that they're handling instinct or emotions and so on and so forth. For us, love has certain principles. You know what I'm saying? There's the brotherly love and sisterly love. There's the parent love. And there's the love of the child. And there's husband and wife love. And there's love of Allah. You see what I'm saying? So we have principles to guide that reality, but we also have to realize that when other people around us are struggling, we have to be able to help them and guide them in those processes right? Not necessarily alienate them so that they're able to grow spiritually and align themselves with Islamic principles. Or else what we do is we just push people out of the deen. This is work. You see what I'm saying? It's easy to say haram. It's easy to say kufr. It's easy to say bid'ah. It's easy to say they're attacking us. But doing the work to get to the Muslim identity and personality and emotional health, that's not easy work. It takes some maturity. So, I want to end with that. I think we reached our time. We started late. But if there's anything anybody wants to add or question or criticize, or is open game.
You mentioned the book from Imam Balkhi. What was the name?
Balkhi, Sustenance of the Soul. And there's no reason not to read it because it's free online PDF, and it has a solid introduction by Dr. Malik Bedri, who was a known psychologist.
Any other questions?
Thank you for coming.
Barakallahu feek.